It is Friday, April 19th. We've made it through another week here on the Mo News Podcast. I'm Moshe Wanunu.
And I'm Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts.
And we read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to. All right, let's begin here with a little bit of housekeeping as we end this week and look ahead to next.
Moshe, I will be taking the week off because my kids are off. So thank you for that. So you will be holding down the fort.
Partially.
Right.
Well, I will be trying to hold down the fort right now, unless there is huge breaking news. There will be no podcast on Monday or Tuesday as the Passover holiday begins. So I will see everyone back here on Wednesday, but not to worry. The Instagram feed will keep going. The newsletter will keep going. But the podcast will be dark for 2 days, though we will have a special edition out on Monday over at Mo News, the interview with our conversation with the senior scientist over at Procter & Gamble, all about laundry. So it was a live we did last night. Thanks for everyone who joined, dispelling myths, giving advice on how to wash certain things, dry certain things, all the various questions you had on laundry. So we are turning that into a podcast, and that'll be out on Monday.
We got the answer to my big question. Do you really need to separate your white clothing from your colored clothing? That answer on Monday's podcast.
All right, Jill, bring us home because you're taking the week off next week. Let's make this one a keeper.
All right, here are the headlines, starting with the housing market in the United States. Just as the important spring season should be heating up, mortgage rates hit their highest level in months. To the Trump trial, where jury selection could wrap up today. The U.S. vetoes a UN resolution calling for full Palestinian membership. The Kennedy family coming out in full force to back President Biden, a rebuke to RFK Jr. To California, where 2 more home insurers withdraw from the market, likely because of out-of-control wildfire seasons. Speaking of wild weather, what exactly is cloud seeding, and did it cause the flooding in Dubai?
It depends on whom you ask and when you asked it, Jill.
Move over Air Jordan. Caitlin Clark could be getting her own Nike sneakers. Plus, it is Friday. Cheers to the freaking weekend, what we are watching, reading, and eating.
And this weekend, with Taylor's new album out today, what we're listening to.
All right, let's start with the latest on the housing market, which just got a bit more expensive. Mortgage rates soared this week past the key 7% threshold, exacerbating America's housing affordability crisis. The 30-year fixed-rate mortgage averaged 7.1 this week. That is the highest level since November. It's also twice as high as it was just 4 years ago. For home buyers, this can mean paying tens of thousands of additional dollars over the life of a mortgage. Experts say it's also a psychological threshold. And again, it comes during the crucial spring home buying season. So what is behind the rate hike? Well, inflation, as we've been reporting, unexpectedly got worse last month, and that means that the Federal Reserve likely will not cut interest rates anytime soon. The Fed does not directly set mortgage rates, but its actions do affect them.
So part of the problem here is that sky-high mortgage rates mean that a lot of potential home sellers, maybe those of you who locked in low mortgages before the Fed started hiking rates, that last decade where we were living in the 2s, where we were living in the 3s, some of you got a mortgage rate that started with a 2. You don't want to give that up and put your house on the market and then have to get a new mortgage that starts with a 6 or now a 7. So it has led to a real housing crunch right now. There just is not a lot of inventory on the market. And with the rate at 7, that continues to dissuade people, including boomers who might be looking to get a smaller home at this point in their lives. They're holding off. And so that has made it difficult for millennials especially, generationally, much later than previous generations in terms of buying their own home, to be able to find something that is affordable. Supply is just not keeping up with demand right now. The National Association of Realtors reported that U.S. home sales declined sharply in March. They read into that as a sign that home buyers are also holding off with hopes that rates will fall. So you have people not wanting to give up their existing rates and find a new place. And then you have some people who are just saying, I'm going to wait until the number starts with a 5 again. I'm going to wait until we're in the low 6s or in the low 5s again. Because, as I've been told, it will not be for a very long time that we see mortgage rates that start with a 3. Now, All of this also follows that settlement we told you about a couple of weeks ago, the historic settlement between the real estate industry and agent commissions that kept agent commissions high. Those new rules go into effect related to agent and broker fees this summer. So that also could be impacting people who are waiting on that for potential savings. So a lot of factors here stymieing the market at the moment.
And switching gears, as promised, we said we would only update on the Trump trial when there is news, and it looks like jury selection could potentially wrap up today. So far, 12 jurors plus one alternate have been selected. There are still 5 alternates that need to be picked. On Thursday, a little drama when it came to some of the jurors. 2 were removed. One juror said that her family and friends had started to ask her if she was one of the jurors, based on descriptions from media reports of her job and her life.
Yeah, you might remember that because the jury questionnaire was effectively public, as reporters are in the courtroom, the lawyers for each side are speaking out and researching folks. Anyway, this woman was an oncology nurse at a hospital in New York, and there were enough details about it where you're like, okay, this could be one of like a couple dozen people on Earth. It'll be pretty easy to figure it out.
Right, like runs an online digital news company, has a podcast. Mosh, are you one of the jurors?
Favorite media source is Mo News. Like, exactly. So there was a lot of public. So while their names were not out there, too much had gotten out there. And so this nurse is one of the jurors who was dropped.
You know, it would be a marketing coup for us if one of these jurors said that they get their news from Mo News.
I know.
It would really put us on the map.
Listen, we still have a chance with these alternates.
So because of the issue with that one juror, the judge then told the group of journalists allowed inside of the courtroom and the media in general that they really need to stop sharing current or past employment information about potential jurors because it's just a little bit too specific. Prosecutors also were concerned that a different juror had apparently been arrested in Westchester for tearing down political advertisements.
Now, this incident happened 3 decades ago, but they still found it relevant today. So they sent that juror home packing as well.
And Trump spoke to reporters at the end of the court day yesterday, saying that he should be on the campaign trail right now, not sitting in a courtroom, which apparently he was saying is very, very cold. He made a big point to stress that the courtroom is very cold. He also held up a Wall Street Journal and some op-ed pieces that basically said that his case is all about politics.
And it's a shame. It's a shame. And I'm sitting here for days now, from morning till night, in that freezing room. Freezing. Everybody was freezing in there.
Jill, it's freezing in there.
It was cold out. It was cold out on Thursday, but
so maybe they're just not using the heat. Maybe because he allegedly fell asleep earlier this week, they want to keep it chilly in there to keep him awake. Nevertheless, my thought was with already 2 jurors being dropped here and some identifying details still out on a number of other jurors, they do have the 6 alternates here, but I wonder if they need to consider additional alternates, just given how high profile this is, and given that there will be actors, nefarious actors out there, who will try to make it their business to figure out who all these jurors are. We did see segments on Fox News on Wednesday night where literally one of the anchors there, Jesse Waters, was going through the jurors and saying, oh, this person doesn't seem like they're going to be good for Trump. The concern, of course, is that the jurors or their families, once they're identified, could be subject to harassment, etc. So that's going to be a challenge throughout this trial. Remember, these 12 individuals, unless some of the alternates come aboard, but ultimately the jury will be 12 people, are sitting deciding the fate of a former president for the first time in American history and a potential future president, right? Because he's running again. So that is a huge challenge here to these 12 individuals. Remember, the first order of business here is saying you can be fair and impartial, which many admitted they couldn't in jury questionnaires. Many of you, actually, almost half of you, we did a survey on Instagram of the Mo News audience, and about 50% of you said, I can't be fair or impartial when it comes to Trump, either because I really don't like him, or because I do like him, or just because he is such a prominent person. Notably, one of the jurors who was seated at the very end, this is juror number 11, was asked in court how she felt about Trump. She responded that she did not have strong opinions, but said, quote, I don't like his persona, how he presents himself in public. But then she adds, I also don't like some of my coworkers, but I don't try to sabotage their work. So that drew some laughter from the jury box. Apparently, the Trump team tried to strike her based on that admission that she does not like his persona. The judge struck that because each team basically had the ability to strike a certain number of jurors without any sort of rationale. And the Trump team had used all of theirs by then. And the judge, believing based on what this woman said, that juror number 11 will be able to be fair. There was one other moment on Thursday that did not end well for one prospective juror. This was a juror who the Trump team found had posted online, again, all these people with their social media accounts, as we discussed earlier this week. Back in 2020, she had posted, quote, Trump is an anathema to everything I was taught about love. In the post, she goes on to call him a racist, sexist, and narcissist. The judge made the juror read that post aloud. She apparently read it aloud, and she stops at one point and says, oops, this sounds really bad, huh? She was then immediately dismissed by the judge. So still remarkable this group is seated here. And the hope from the judge is that this trial will get started as soon as next week.
And one other piece of political news to watch this weekend, Speaker Mike Johnson has unveiled that long-awaited package of bills that will provide military aid to Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, and also give humanitarian assistance to civilians in Gaza. It is a $95.2 billion spending bill, which is the same amount that the Senate had passed back in mid-February. He is hoping to bring it to the House floor this weekend.
Yeah, there are a few differences from the Senate bill to try to get his right-wing flank aboard. While this bill does include $61 billion for Ukraine like the Senate, this provides that more than $9 billion in economic assistance to Ukraine will be in the form of forgivable loans. This was an idea pushed by Trump and some other conservatives, saying that effectively we should not just give away all this money to Ukraine, that they should have to pay it back at some point. So the hope here from Johnson is that appeases some conservative members of the House. And they also put in there a requirement that Biden provide a plan and strategy to Congress for what it seeks to achieve in Ukraine. The administration, the White House, has not had to do that until now. And that's a larger question everyone's been asking, which is, what is the end goal here? Because unless you have NATO or the U.S. get in there, there is no real way that the Ukrainian military, even with U.S. aid, can ever get the Russians out of all of its territory. So what is the end game here? To what extent will we continue to help the Ukrainians? For how long? How many months, years, etc.? And what is the end goal? That's a question Republicans are asking the White House to answer in this bill. And of course, as we mentioned yesterday, this bill also has an updated ban or sell provision for TikTok, requiring the China-based owner of TikTok, ByteDance, to now sell within a year as opposed to 6 months. There were some folks over on the Senate side that felt that that was a more fair and legal approach here. So the hope is that this new TikTok, you must sell to a non-Chinese company or you'll be banned here, bill, this new version will move faster through the Senate.
Time for the speed read from Reuters. The United States on Thursday voted against a Palestinian request for full United Nations membership, blocking the world body from officially recognizing Palestine as a full state. A U.S. official tells Reuters it remains the U.S. view that the most expeditious path toward statehood for the Palestinian people is through direct negotiations between Israel and the Palestinian Authority with the support of the United States and other partners. The 15-member council voted on a draft resolution that recommends to the 193-member UN General Assembly that the state of Palestine be admitted to membership. 12 countries supported the resolution. The UK and Switzerland abstained, and the United States voted against. But as one of the 5 permanent members, the no from the United States means that a resolution is vetoed. The UK, France, Russia, and China also have veto power.
Yeah, so for the Palestinians, they were hoping to become the 194th country in the UN officially. Their status remains sort of like how D.C. and Puerto Rico are in U.S. Congress, not full states with full representation, but with some powers, some observers. They are a non-member observer state with a de facto recognition of statehood. And it comes as internationally, Palestine is recognized by 140 countries around the world, not recognized by just over 50. Most of the global south, which is South America, Africa, also a lot of Asia, except for Japan and a couple of other countries, all recognize it. Not so much in North America and in Europe. Only 8 of the 27 EU members recognize Palestine. Of course, the US, Canada, and Mexico do not as well. The ambassador to the UN for the Israelis said effectively, and this is something that the U.S. echoes, that the Palestinians failed to meet the basic criteria for becoming a full UN member. You need a defined territory, one government, and the capacity to enter into relations with other states. Right now, you have still Hamas running Gaza. You have the Palestinian Authority running parts of the West Bank. You then have like individual parts. And then the Israelis note that there are individual towns in the West Bank that are run by groups like Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. So for the Israelis, for the U.S., the Palestinians are not there yet. Now, the Palestinians say in return. Now, the Palestinians did criticize this decision yesterday, saying, how could recognizing us damage the prospects of a potential peace between us? How could this harm international security? They've been pushing for this for a while. Also keep in mind for the Israelis and for the U.S., recognizing a Palestinian state in the aftermath of October 7th, they feel is the wrong lesson for groups like Hamas to show them that effectively they achieved international recognition and statehood through the events and aftermath of October 7th.
From Axios, members of the Kennedy family appeared together to endorse President Biden at a campaign event in Philadelphia Thursday. It is a public display of support that reveals a weakness for Biden. He is likely more at risk from Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s third-party challenge than former President Trump is, with a substantial number of voters telling pollsters that they are dissatisfied with both Biden and Trump. Democrats are increasingly worried that a Kennedy name on the ballot will throw the election in Trump's favor. One of RFK's sisters, Kerry Kennedy, invoked the legacy of her slain father, former Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, as well as that of her uncles, former President John F. Kennedy and Senator Ted Kennedy. She said, I could only imagine how Donald Trump's outrageous lies and behavior would have horrified my father. President Biden has been a champion for all the rights and freedoms that my father and uncles stood for.
Yeah, and then in a dig at her brother, she added that in 2024, there are 2 candidates with any chance of winning the presidency. And that's the real story here, right? That RFK Jr. Is still vying to get on all 50 ballots and is extremely, 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 extremely unlikely to win the White House, given the current trajectory of things. But the concern is that he could play a spoiler here. And Democrats are worried that even if he takes a few percent here, that could mean that a state like a Wisconsin or a Michigan or an Arizona or a Georgia, all those states in 2020 finished with just tens of thousands of votes, or sometimes literally 10,000 votes, separating Trump and Biden. So enough voters go over to RFK, and he's taking more than Biden, and they're done. They lose those states. And so, the thinking here is to bring out the Kennedys for this big rally. It's unclear where the Kennedy name still has a lot of resonance that could make an impact here, but certainly Pennsylvania is a state where if you go to certain western parts, you do see a lot of nostalgia for the Kennedy name and the Kennedys from the 1960s. So that is the hope here. Of course, the Democrats are also going to be fighting RFK Jr. legally. They've put together a whole team of communications professionals, legal professionals, who will be trying to get him off the ballot, questioning the various petitions that he has, signatures that he has. And we should note RFK Jr.'s response to many members of his family and several of his siblings speaking out against him. By the way, this is not new. Several of them have been criticizing him. Several of them have been criticizing him for years for his views on vaccines and other controversial positions. He writes on Twitter, I hear some of my family will be endorsing Biden today. I'm pleased that they're politically active. It's a family tradition. We're divided in our opinions, but united in our love for each other. I also hold this possibility for America, too. Can we disagree without hating our opponents? Can we restore civility and respect to public discourse? I think we can. So RFK Jr., with his nearly a dozen siblings, Jill, letting us in on the fact that the Kennedys do not always agree with each other.
You know what? I think that's not the worst response to what
I thought it was a great response. It's like, do you agree with everyone in your family? Now, others would say having most of your siblings and dozens and dozens of members of your family endorse your political opponent when you're trying to become the next president is very, sort of Conor Roy succession. situation, as in like my family doesn't even think I can be president. But I think he's used to this by now.
From Bloomberg, California's already strained home insurance market facing a new challenge as 2 more insurers plan to withdraw from the wildfire-prone state entirely starting in July. The 2 companies, Tokyo Marine America Insurance Company and Trans-Pacific Insurance Company, disclosed their plans and filings submitted to the California Department of Insurance. They say the decision will affect about 13,000 policies. But Moshe, I do think it is emblematic of a big problem that we're facing in a growing part of this country. The companies didn't give a reason for pulling out of the market, but major insurers across California are ending or reducing coverage as the state grapples with risks posed by wildfires and other natural disasters fueled by climate change.
Yeah, we've been talking about this story. This is something we're seeing along the Gulf Coast in Texas, especially Louisiana. Florida is a major issue, California and the West, with their wildfire risk and now their flooding risk. In the past couple of winters, we've gradually been seeing more and more companies starting to pull out or not offer any new policies. So you saw State Farm General Insurance. They said they would be cutting about 72,000 policies in July. And then you have companies like Allstate, the Hartford, Farmers, USAA, who are pausing or no longer offering new policies in certain areas. Now, the state is stepping in here in California. The insurance commissioner there last year announced a new regulatory overhaul to allow insurers to factor future climate risks and reinsurance costs into their pricing. Translation, you can stay here and we know you'll make it much more. Translation, we know your policies will be much more expensive, but you can stay here and that's cool with us even with super expensive policies. Still, some insurers are like, we're done in certain areas. And it is making things difficult. We should say, Jill, it's not just climate change. There's a lot of insurance fraud out there. So in particular in Florida, where you see certain insurers pulling out, some of the reason they're pulling out is because of the extent of fraud after natural disasters, et cetera, that has bankrupted some companies and really put a dent in others.
All right, from CNBC now to the question of whether any of Dubai's record rainfall this week was due to what's called cloud seeding. The United Arab Emirates National Center of Meteorology is denying reports that it carried out the weather modification technique in the run-up to heavy storms across the country, therefore exacerbating flooding in places like Dubai. The organization telling CNBC that it did not dispatch pilots for seeding operations before or during that storm that struck the UAE on Tuesday. Dubai got more than 6 inches of rain in 12 hours. That is nearly 2 times the average rainfall that it gets in a year.
Right. 2 years of rainfall in 12 hours. So this denial from authorities in Dubai follows a meteorologist, a specialist, who works for the government, who told a reporter the previous day, oh yeah, we had actually seeded some clouds, so that had to do with this. His name is Ahmed Habib. He then the next day says, no, I was wrong.
Whoops.
I've been told by my bosses the pilots were flying the mission to seed clouds, but they didn't actually drop anything inside the clouds. So believe who you want in this case. It's hard to verify, but we should back up here and explain what cloud seeding is, because that's been a big question we've gotten in the last couple of days. Effectively, this is a practice that involves injecting a chemical known as silver iodide into clouds that contain large amounts of water vapor, as in clouds that already look like they might produce rain. The substance, the silver iodide, can encourage the formation of ice crystals, which promote precipitation in the form of rain or snow. So this has been used out west for years in states like California, Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico, to basically boost. It's a booster to clouds. It can't just like take a cloud that was going to produce 0 rain and make it rain, literally, a lot. At the same time, they have seen that, ultimately you can boost rainfall totals by around 5%, 10% maybe. And so ultimately, Dubai was going to get what it was going to get here. The question is whether, it boosted it around the edges by potentially seeding. Now, again, the authorities in Dubai, which is part of the United Arab Emirates, the UAE, they say no, even though they've been doing this for years. They say they saw that storm coming. It was at a large scale. We weren't going to mess with it. It was a slow moving, low atmospheric pressure, abundant moisture in the air. it was going to be a lot of rain, and we didn't need to. So cloud seeding, used in certain parts of the world, it can't really help with droughts, so to speak. Again, it's sort of just booster effect. So it can add some snowfall or rainfall totals on the margins.
I can tell you, though, that this is a story that is sparking a lot of interest. I was at a dinner the other night, and this is all my friends wanted to talk about, was like, what is up with cloud seeding going on in Dubai?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that's been discussed for many years. Part of the reason, Jill, is because there are conspiracies on the right. The government controls the weather. And they are creating, sort of crazy storms in certain areas for political purposes, including to push the narrative of climate change so they can get certain policies across. So certain people have been pushing this, are saying, hey, gotcha. Here, clearly evidence that cloud seeding is happening and people are trying to mess with the weather. But again, if you look at the science of this, even when cloud seeding happens, it's not like cloud seeding allows you to create a hurricane or, massive storms from nothing. It just has a slight booster effect from what we've seen.
From The Atlantic, Indiana Fever rookie phenom Caitlin Clark, the number one pick in Monday's WNBA draft, is nearing a lucrative 8-figure endorsement deal with Nike, according to sources. She is expected to receive a signature Nike shoe as well. Under Armour and Adidas had reportedly made sizable offers to Clark. She already has endorsement deals with Gatorade, State Farm, and Panini. Clark's previous deal with Nike ended after the conclusion of the recently finished college basketball season. Moshe, earlier this week, we talked about the social media uproar over her WNBA salary, considerably lower than professional men. One of the big reasons being that the WNBA brings in a lot less money than the NBA. It is looking like Clark could be changing things, though.
Yeah, this is sort of what we anticipated, right? That, she's a megastar, and she's really going to help change the game for the women. Just for context, again, the WNBA makes about $200 million a year. Every NBA franchise itself, every individual NBA franchise makes about $200 million a year. In fact, the LA Lakers make about double what the entire WNBA makes. So that's what leads to issues like not being able to pay, right? The Indiana Fever entire payroll for players is $1 million. So they all split that up, and she makes about $75,000 in her first year. So she's got that 5-figure salary, Jill, but now an 8-figure deal from Nike. She set viewership records for the NCAA. We imagine the same will happen in the WNBA. Her season starts in just a few weeks here in mid-May. Steph Curry from the Golden State Warriors, who launched his own Curry brand, has participated in some of the company meetings with Clark. She's already done a guest appearance on SNL. So there's a lot of interest in her. And I imagine when the Players Union renegotiates their deal with the WNBA in the next year or two, you will see all those salaries go up, partially thanks to Ms. Clark.
And Moshe, it is Friday. Cheers to the freaking weekend. Time for what we are watching, reading, and eating. What are you watching?
So, Jill, I heard about this film a while ago. It has just come to Netflix. It's called Freud's Last Session. It's a fictional account of Sigmund Freud, who in this case is played by Anthony Hopkins, and a Christian apologist and author C.S. Lewis having a conversation about God, the universe, everything. Should be an interesting philosophical film, Jill, and I'm a big fan of Anthony Hopkins, so look forward to watching that. What do you got?
I'm going to be watching the Bob Marley movie, Bob Marley One Love. It's out on Paramount Plus. I wanted to see it when it was in theaters, but I did not get around to it, so I'm looking forward to that.
Jill, you have a Paramount Plus password?
I do.
Can you share it with me at some point?
Sure. I
can't subscribe to all the streamers, so that was news to me that you have Paramount Plus access. I appreciate that.
Well, Moshe, when Olivia starts getting into Paw Patrol, you'll understand why Paramount Plus is essential.
Got it.
And I have one more edition here. This is what I am listening to.
Ooh, a special listening to edition.
Yes, we mentioned it at the top, but the new Taylor Swift album, Avi. Okay, Moshe, what are you reading?
Jill, a friend of the pod, Bill Weir, the CNN climate correspondent, has a new book out this week called Life as We Know It. Life as We Know It, and It Can Be. It's an optimistic look at some of the people trying to change the world, trying to help with climate change. He wrote this inspired by his kids, wanting to inspire them about the people working to make this century a good place for them, noting that our kids will be that our kids, God willing, will live into the 22nd century. They will be seeing the 22nd century. So as we talk about all this doom and gloom climate change, looking forward to finishing Bill's book about it. What do you got?
I'm going to be on my vacation, Moshe. I'm going to be reading Bad Summer People, described by a reviewer on Amazon as a sharp, funny, juicy read you didn't know you needed. We love this Big Little Lies with attitude meets Real Housewives of the One Percenters. Who Done It, set in an elite summer enclave near Fire Island. Fire Island is one of the barrier islands on Long Island. So this seems to be, Moshe, everything I'm about and what I'd be looking for in a novel to escape a little bit. Recommended by my friend Randy. She, I do not think, listens to this podcast, but her parents do. So hi, guys.
Hi, Randy's parents.
And Moshe, what are we eating?
So my wife made incredible chia seed pudding with little mango chunks in it. So we have that recipe linked in the show notes and over in the newsletter today.
All right, I'm going to be eating some matzo brie, some matzo ball soup, and my favorite, jelly rings. Do you like those? Do you like those, Moshe?
Not my fave, Jill, but I don't mind one or two.
I put them in the freezer, and I could basically take down an entire box. Not pretty. It's not my best moment.
Jill, good luck with all the unleavened bread next week. It takes a toll on the belly after a few days.
It sure does. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Mo News Podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this with your friends. It will help us grow. Follow us, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and review us in the App Store.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us this week. Again, if there's major breaking news Monday or Tuesday, I will be sure to bring it to you. Otherwise, be ready for a regular, at least solo edition, starting on Wednesday and the rest of the week. And look out for our special edition on all things laundry over on the Interview Podcast on Monday. Jill, have a wonderful, restful, safe week in Florida.
I don't know about restful, but I'll take it. Thanks, Moshe. Bye, everyone.